Hello, everybody. This is Kate Foggo and Julie Hurt, and we are making light to humans being. So today, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but I was talking to Julie about, Julie's been trying to rile me up into things that will get me angry, and I have been trying not to talk about things that make me angry since I started down my spiritual path, shall we say, because it throws me off, basically. And I do believe the law of attraction about how you shouldn't be focusing on things, that are unsavory to you. You shouldn't be that you should be putting your attention on things you want and not on unwanted. However, in the last couple of sessions, if you've been following along with us, Julie's been talking about, I think we called it righteous anger. I'm not sure. Did we call it righteous anger? Righteous actually is a word that perhaps,
I don't know if I called it that or not. I know it was influenced heavily by mysticism. So
yes, but it was about how I think nothing good comes without basically people getting angry, at the root of change, and that anger, as Danielle McKinnon, our teacher, says, is really the crossing of boundaries. It means a boundary has been crossed, and that there's nothing wrong with anger. And it's about using your anger constructively to make changes, whereas I find it very difficult to separate the emotional side of it. So from my perspective, from a law of attraction perspective, my viewpoint is there's no point getting angry about things if you can't hold your alignment through it. So I tend to avoid situations because I do get too emotionally involved, and you're no good to anyone. I mean, that's really the law of attraction perspective on anger, is there's no point putting your attention on things that are unwanted because you're just adding to them. So if you're going to do anything with your anger, you have to make sure that you are in alignment, and I'm not sure I'm able to do that. All that said, Julie's discussions about things that piss her off, and I come up with a few of my own, actually, and so we just thought we'd go for it and see what happens, since we're getting bolder and bolder in the things that we talk about. So I'm going to try and stay in alignment. And the thing is, this is what worries me a bit, Julie, is that I am much more effective in terms of getting people's attention. I don't know if it's effective in terms of getting them to agree with me, but certainly in terms of getting people's attention, if I lose it a little bit. And I'm not sure that's alignment. What do you think?
It might not be. Let's see what happens. I did think that was brilliant, though, what you said. I'd never thought of it that way, that there's anger, and then if you're in the moment and can hold your alignment through the anger, like you can really get to some passionate creative. Because when we look at what Matthew Fox was saying, it was you have your anger to find the passion, and then do something creative around it to bring it to light, or the issue or whatever. And I'm paraphrasing what he says, but so that was interesting. That's an interesting topic too. So you do you. I will do me, and we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see how well we can hold alignment, because I do feel like, anger can be a tool for good.
Okay, so I used to be a really angry person. I'll be honest. There were a lot. Sorry.
You said you are an angry person?
I used to be.
Okay.
For lots of reasons, mostly because I was miserable, but also just because I've always been supporter of the underdog. I was always very much involved in anti-nuclear stuff like that when I was younger. When I first came back to Britain at the age of 16, it just seemed ridiculous to me that anyone would even consider nuclear weapons. So I was very active in that. I was an activist, I suppose, and I came back to Britain at the age of 16, having lived in Africa all my life. So my first introduction to politics was very eye-opening to me, and I probably took things at face value because I hadn't been influenced by years of growing up with other people. So I went in there, if you like, as an adult at 16, grown up enough to have all my faculties and understanding of form my own opinions up until that point. And suddenly, so I think I was quite objective, shall we say, when I came in, because I wasn't influenced by my family or my friends, because we didn't have any of these things in Kenya. Well, we would have done, but they would have been different, but they weren't labeled. So I didn't know anything about how my parents voted, or how, I didn't know any of that. So I just came in, I think, with fresh eyes and thought, what the fuck? Nuclear weapons, to me, absolutely ridiculous. Why would anybody, stuff like that. So in that sense, I suppose I was an activist. feel very strongly about things, always have done. I've always been very outspoken. And actually, my sister said to me that one of the things she felt I had lost since I started my spiritual journey is that I'm not me in that sense. She said that she always admired the fact that I was really, really outspoken and I never gave a shit what anyone thought. Okay, so we've had some technical difficulties and neither of us are exactly sure where I got cut off mid-rant. So we're going to try again. I'll try and piece it together. Maybe I'll do it.
Yeah, maybe start with your sister, where you were talking about how your sister felt.
So my sister just sort of said that she felt like I had lost something in that she had always seen me as someone who was very outspoken, didn't care what people thought, and that I didn't get angry anymore. Now, from my perspective, I feel a lot happier because I don't get angry, but I do sort of get what she means, because there is some satisfaction in having a really good rant. And I like to pride myself on it. Actually, it's quite funny. but is it? And I did struggle very much with the Eckhart Tolle and law of attraction that sort of says, just don't go there, just don't go there, just don't go there. Because there's a bit of me, first of all, it was like, what do you mean, don't go there? Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. But the other bit is, you know, it's so much, I don't know if it is in America, but so much of our culture here is about complaining, you know, and it's funny. And we, you know, we make jokes about things that are wrong, but there's, you know, there's a lot of humor is around people getting angry about anything, everything. And I do really struggle with what is any of it okay? Is it okay? But I think the bottom line has to be, can you hold your alignment through it? If you can rant and complain about it. There is a very good story in Law of Attraction that Esther Hicks talks about, Abraham Hicks, shall we say, talks about, where Esther is in, and this is Law of Attraction for anyone that doesn't know, that she's in the airport lounge, and there is a minor delay. Have you heard this one? There's a minor delay, and they all, being the passengers, start to tell their worst delay stories, and Esther gets right in there and she's having a grand old time telling his story, all the while sort of knowing she shouldn't be, and has a great laugh, and they're all like ranting and raving about how awful this airline is and all these terrible stories, and she ends up basically being delayed, I think indefinitely, and ends up, by the time she gets back to the house, she's actually locked out of her house and has to spend the night in the gatehouse or something, you know, just a catalogue of stuff going wrong. And, you know, Abraham sort of says, what did you expect? You know, you had your little field day, you had a good time, you had a good laugh, you brought all that vibration to, you know, about how things go wrong, and it all went wrong. What did you expect? So that's sort of why I avoid it. Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens. So yeah, is that, do you think I've covered what I missed? You don't know what I missed because you didn't hear me.
I think you
we don't know how the,
do
we
you
don't know what the recording might be from my side.
I know, I'll be interested to see what all, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to make a quick comment before you jump into the specific topic, if you will. So what's interesting to me when you brought up Eckhart Tolle and then of course Abraham Hicks is, and this is something that, because I've grappled with too, this idea of, I've had it it started in my teenage years when I started listening to U2, and then all of like what I'll call rebel music, if you will, like where they would bring political issues into the music and then sing about them so you would learn more about it, which is that's the first reason why I love U2 anyway. But I also have this my motto, and it's been on my personal Facebook page, is that if it's to be, it's up to me, or if not now, then when, and if not me, then whom. So I've kind of lived by that, thinking I have to take the entire world on my shoulders and fight. And that's the key word in this, and fight for everything. Since we've gone through so much of this work with, you know, animal communication and intuitive coaching and our teacher Danielle, and then you've got, you know, Eckhart Tolle, Abraham Hicks, and then, I mean, Marianne Williamson, name anybody, any and all of them, Matt Kahn. You know, now I'm realizing that, and I've come to this theory right now that I'm playing with this, is everybody brings a piece of pie to the table. So it is an activist piece of pie to do certain things. It is how my piece of pie is, how am I going to engage in that? How am I going to participate in that? But this fighting, because we've talked about like the war on drugs is like this whole thing that's never going to resolve itself, because you're coming at something with force instead of power, or negativity instead of love. So when I think about things that need to be reviewed, examined, discussed, like what we want to talk about today, or what we've talked about with the Texas law, or even racism, when we need to talk about it, we need to come at it from a, yes, there's anger that's fueling our passion and creativity, but I also feel like we have to be grounded in a place of love so that we can talk through solutions and be open and honest and vulnerable. And in that, that's where change begins to happen. That's
maybe that's that simple. That's beautifully put, Julie. The difference between coming at it from love as opposed to coming at it from fear. Maybe it is that simple.
Yeah.
Well, let's try it. So we'll see how much love there is in this. So we are still struggling with Julie's internet, which makes a change because it's normally mine, actually, because I haven't had any warnings. So two things. One of them irritates me, the other upsets me deeply. So we'll start with the irritating one. How long we got? Because you might have to shut me up.
Yeah, 22 minutes.
22 minutes. Okay, so if we do 8 minutes each, and then I'll let you interrupt me. No, okay. It shouldn't take that long. It's not that complex at all. Well, okay, recycling. Okay, now I do understand Britain's been behind the curve compared to Europe. I mean, I remember going to Europe, traveling when I was at university, and not understanding what all these signs were about, that we had to do things. And actually, we stayed in student accommodation in Germany. It was not Berlin, it was in Munich, and all these signs appeared in English about how to use recycling, which we found very insulting. But you know, they were right. We had no idea where to put anything. We just put it in a bag and take it out the building and hide it in a dumpster because we didn't know what to do with it. But what irritates me about recycling is it's all down to the consumer. Now that really bugs me. Again, it's all about, oh, we'll vote with your feet and consumers have power and all that. It's like, but we're right at the bottom of the rung. These decisions have been made all the way down the chain, right? The decisions have been made by the producers about the packaging, about this, that, and the other. It's not all about the consumer. It just feels really, I can't think what the word is. I get this sort of shrugging off of responsibility. If we'll just let the consumer mop it up. So I have to sort out all this about recycling. Well, why did you put it in a packet that can't, why did you put it in this packaging? Why is it up to me? It's like it's become such a joke in Britain, especially, of how stuff is recycled, and other countries too. I remember in Turkey, and I'm sure it happens in Britain as well, depends where you are. So they have all these different bins. When they're collected, they all get shoved into one bin because actually the place that's servicing it can't deal with all of this. It's like a fucking joke. It's like all down to the consumer. I mean, I do understand they're trying to train us for a situation where they can recycle everything, but it's all put down on the consumer. Now, me as a consumer, I have to drive to my recycling center. How is that? In the big picture, it's like there's hundreds of things that irritate me about this. One is that it's all sort of down to the individual to sort it out. Two is that nobody looks at the big picture. It's the same with anything that becomes fashionable. It's like fucking electric cars. Like in Britain, most electricity is still being used by coal. Like what? Nobody looks at the big picture. Corn, there's one. Corn for vegans and stuff like that, about the air miles. You cannot look at a vegetarian or a processed food now that says about the air miles in it that are genuinely, that they go with carbon friendly or with this friendly or with that friendly. No, you're not. All depends on what benchmark you're using. Most of the stuff that's processed for vegan food gets made in one country, gets shipped to another country where it's processed again, and then shipped to another country where it's processed again, and they'll put one little thing on their website that says grown in Britain. Like they'll only, obviously, and because this is marketing, they'll take the only thing that looks okay. What they don't say is the fact it's actually been all the way around the road, all the way around the world to be stuff like that. It's like everybody uses, it's become fashionable to be able to, I suppose that's just marketing in general, isn't it? It's like,
welcome to my world. Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's just like, just be fucking honest, right? We do the best, or at least go, we're doing the best we can, and here's what we do. But just all of this, it's all down to the consumer and about our choice. And then the really big thing that gets me, and again, it's blaming the consumer, is like food, meat specifically, but things like battery hens. Like I have, as you know, I've got 3 hens. I did have 5, they're ex-battery. I didn't realize what terrible conditions they live in. I don't want a go on about it. You know, if you're interested, go and look it up. It'll just make me cry. But, you know, it's awful, absolutely awful how they're treated. But then they said, and then, so that's battery hens, but there was a big push in Britain a few years ago about how chickens are raised for meat. And there's some of our chefs, I think it was Jamie Oliver or something, you know, anyway, some of these chefs, and Hugh Ferning, can't remember his name, who's a bit of a toff, and Gary thinks he's hilarious, but he's a nice guy. And he looked at all this, you know, and he was in tears about it all because of the way they're kept. And the argument was from the supermarkets or the big food manufacturers is, well, people have got used to cheap food. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah, but what, that doesn't make it my fault. Of course, if you can offer me a chicken for £2 and a chicken for £5 and I'm short of money, I'm going to go for the £2 chicken. But nowhere along this line did I sign a piece of paper that said, I understand that by buying this chicken, it has been through hell. Like most people, had a vague understanding that there was certain welfare involved in this. At no point did anyone ever say to me, you want £2 off your chicken? Here's what it's going to cost you. Not you, here's what it's going to cost the chicken. Do you know, all these decisions have been made by people who are making money, and that's what irritates me. These are the people who should be held accountable. Not me once I've got used to living off £2 chicken, you know, but somebody along the line said, actually, do you know what? I think it's okay to treat these chickens like shit, and it will get me another £2 per kilo. Let's do that. That's the decision that shouldn't have passed. Not me at the bottom going, I can get cheap chicken. How can you blame somebody who is penny pinching, or not penny pinching, that's the wrong word, but like somebody who struggles to feed their family or what? And there's, you know, food is astronomical in this country, and I mean, the cost of living has gone through the roof and wages haven't changed in a long time. Things are getting worse and worse. We have more people at food banks now than I think that there's ever been. So they want cheap chicken. Fine. You know, maybe they wouldn't have got used to eating chicken, you know, because we probably eat far too much meat. But it's like, you can't then blame the people. Somebody somewhere made those decisions. When was it okay? Who decided it was okay to treat an animal like that? I didn't.
So how do you, okay, so just to clarify, because this is where I get a little just lost a little. How do you, or why do you feel like you are being blamed?
Because the bottom line is, I am now made to feel that I should not have bought cheap chicken. If I was not creating that demand for cheap chicken, that cheap chicken would not have happened. And that is patently untrue. But that's the argument that sort of supermarkets or food manufacturers come back for. There's a market for it, as if to say, you know, because if I want free range chicken and pay £7, £8, £9 instead of £2 for a chicken, and those people can't do that. So people who are trying to do organic chicken, free range chicken can't, you know, it's not a sustainable business for them because they're competing against someone who's £2 per chicken.
Yeah.
You know, but I am, you know, being sort of, I suppose, vaguely middle class, vaguely affluent type person. It's down to me to make that decision to buy the better chicken, which of course I do if I can afford to. But there's hundreds and thousands and millions of people who cannot make that decision.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair.
Right.
That you should not be able to buy chicken that has been treated that badly. It should not be available. You can't just turn around and say people expect cheap chicken. No, people have got used to cheap chicken because you made cheap chicken available. If chicken had always been a fiver and you'd always treated it right, we wouldn't be in this situation.
Right. Okay. So you want my take on this?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So for me, in my activism roots and my spiritual journey, as I look at everything that we've learned so far, and then me even getting into mysticism, Matthew Fox, to me, this all goes back to the imbalance of the divine feminine, the divine masculine. You know, as I've said, if everybody's watching before, in a nutshell, because this is, as you can see, when you take a step back, this is like the fungi network that we were talking about in the Fantastic Fungi movie. This is an intricate network of a lot of different things. So, but in a nutshell, we were far more aligned as human beings, as a species, Homo sapiens, with nature before the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague happens, lots of people die, we become afraid, we go, ooh, nature, ick, and we separate ourselves from nature. So this separateness that we are experiencing, we have done this for centuries, this removal of ourselves from the integration of us and nature, which is evident in how we treat animals, evident in the food supply, evident in the petroleum-based packaging that we have, evident in, not this, because this brand makes sure that it's recycled material, but Patagonia, but many of the outerwear that we wear is petroleum based. So there's so many things that are going on that have allowed humans to stay separate from what is actually going in our bodies, going on our bodies, where our bodies live, how our bodies integrate with the world around us. A lot of it is absolutely driven by money.
I would say all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we have put more value on money and the exchange of money and who has money and therefore who has power than who has access to, and I'm pointing out my window, who has access to fresh air, clean water, and all the things. So at the root of it is, to me, when I'm watching the news and I'm watching all the things, this huge imbalance of the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and I'm not saying male, female in, sexual gender roles. I'm just saying, knowledge is a divine masculine, wisdom is divine feminine, and we have to come together and think. That's just one example. Nature is typically divine feminine, money, force, military, divine masculine. So we have to balance these things. So, for this particular topic, the thing that always strikes me, and this too is part of this imbalance, is the apathy that has reigned for I'll just say the common middle class human beings, if you will, because to some degree, knowledge is controlled by the patriarchy, and I'm not saying men exactly, but the systems in the Western culture, the systems that have been built around to maintain power.
I think it is a patriarchy, but yeah. Yeah,
I mean, it is patriarchy, but I'm not saying, I'm trying to distance this patriarchy idea from men are bad, because it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's integrated. It's not exactly the same thing. Yeah, because not all.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, some men, like RuPaul, embrace the divine feminine within, right? So anyway, but as human beings, as we look at this separateness, we have allowed, when I look at it from my own individual humanness, I have allowed things to transpire without me learning more, which is why, I read so much. And why? Because I'm like, oh, well, somebody said that doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. Let me research it. So that then I can have a conversation about it. And then instead of doing that type of resistance thing, we can have a conversation about it. So when I look at the food situation, the more we can share, this is what happens when you purchase. For years ago, I started buying organic milk because I knew what happens. I know what happens with cows. I actually don't do milk as much, but anyway, or dairy as much. But I knew that at the time I made more money than other people. So I could purchase organic milk. So I could create demand so that then it becomes more popular, which would bring the price in line so that other people can afford it. That was just my stance in it. But somehow we have to help more people understand. Are there people within the industries that you mentioned that are in it for profit only? Sure.
They are all in it for profit.
No, I can't agree with that, because I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I know so many good people that are there for the betterment of all, including animals. So it's hard for me to say across the board that everybody there is not for.
I do not believe that somebody that raises a farm with chickens in the conditions that they are raised in can honestly say they're doing it for the good of anybody, because nobody, I don't believe it. I would rather, and again, I think it's admirable that you go away and you learn all this stuff, but my point is you shouldn't have to. Somebody allowed this to happen and it wasn't me. I did not give my permission, right? Therefore, don't hold me accountable for it. And that's what really annoys me. Me and everybody else had no idea this was happening. By the time we find out it's happening, it's mainstream, it's out of control, it's become normal. Nobody, if you look at a factory farm of animals, I refuse to believe that anybody who loves animals or anybody who has a soul can even look at that and go, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Really?
Well, I think of a couple things, two things. One is Ainsley MacLeod. We've read his book, and there's different soul levels. As our book club went through it, we realized many of us were soul level 8, 9, or 10s. We have a 10.
I think I'm only a 6.
What?
I think I'm a 6.
Oh,
Am I not?
Oh, I think you're a 9. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, anything 5 and above, you begin to move away from money as the crux of what you do, in the simplest of terms. And I'm paraphrasing Ainsley MacLeod, so a little bit of grace here. When you're and because there are more humans on the planet than ever before, and we are actually we've overrun the planet. So you have to realize that there are more younger souls that are driven by money and power than older souls that aren't so much. And so you can see even how this imbalance between divine feminine, divine masculine, it gets exacerbated. This idea, so for example, like a factory farm, and the farmer that owns it, the company that runs it, all that stuff, it's very possible that many of those people are younger souls. And they're going through a process to learn. This idea, though, that it's someone else's responsibility, and that you shouldn't have to research, you shouldn't have to play, like there's that separateness to me, that you're to say, well, that's their fault, and why do I have to do all this stuff? There's that separateness to me that comes up.
I don't mean why do I have to do this stuff. What I mean is, things in our society should not be able to happen just because I'm not, me personally, Kate Fogel, on top of it trying to stop it. Like, I am not the only, somebody, and a good, people made laws about this. This wasn't just one man in a shed trying to make a lot of money. There's a lot of people involved in the laws around animal welfare, in the laws around food chain, and laws around everything. There's a lot of people, including, one hopes, the fucking government, right? Who are all people who are not in it for the money, allegedly, and they allow this to happen. How did that happen? Kate Fogel, cannot be on top of everything.
So, have you ever watched the movie WallE?
No.
It's a Disney Pixar. I'm pretty sure it's a Pixar. It's an animated film. It's about this little Earth's destroyed. There's one robot left. His name's WallE. And he just goes around trying to find another source, another.
That sounds like something that's just going to make me cry.
I don't know. I
know how I am with abandonment, Julie.
Say what?
You know how I am with abandonment.
Yes, true. However, so what's interesting is that he finds the humans. They all live on a spaceship that's orbiting the Earth. But everything is taken care of for them. They don't have to physically move because they're on these little platforms. They don't have to eat because stuff just gets, can't remember. I think stuff just gets injected, or I don't know, remember. But like, they basically didn't have to do a damn thing. And so they had become so numb and apathetic and separate from everything that they don't even live on the planet anymore. They're circling because they can't even live on the planet because of what they brought, right? So there's how do I want to say this? So it's as many people as, so okay, I'm going to say it this way. So WallE, watch WallE. It's helpful. As for as many people that I will just say, okay, I'm going to take a step back. We created this. We created this. When you look at it through the centuries, we are all we are human beings. We are divine having a human experience. So me being the divine having a human experience centuries and centuries and centuries ago took place in, I'm guessing, coming to this country, pushing out indigenous people, taking out the copper and the coal and all the stuff and putting it in the air. Like, we all came from this. And now, and so the balance began to tilt towards the masculine. Now we're part of this whole time where it's, well, wait a minute, this isn't necessarily the best way to move forward. We're in balance, now we're realizing it. And so it's still up to us. It was up to us to create it. It's up to us to create something new and something better. So it's not about going around and in my opinion, there's just like the war on drugs. There's just like that type of war on drugs. It doesn't help to blame and put people in jail and fine them, because that feels very anger and it's still separate. It's more like, how can I do my part to do what's in the greatest and highest good and allow that to ripple out. However,
so here's why I can't have these conversations, because I just want to kill them, Julie. I think they should all be punished. I think they should be sentenced to death. I think they should all live horrible lives. You see, this is why I cannot have these conversations, because I can feel no compassion. And I know everything you're saying is true. But I would like to hunt them down and kill them. All these individuals who made these decisions that allowed animals to suffer, all these people who are greedy and that hurt people. This is why I cannot hold my alignment through these conversations, because I do not feel, I feel the same resistance as to when we talked about white privilege. Like, how dare you blame me, Julie? How dare you say that I am part of this? Like, I not me, Gov. I feel all that, and I feel really angry that there has been a society of people who have taken advantage of those of the rest of us. Just I get that people need to be more aware of where their food comes from, but there is a bit of me that says they shouldn't have to be. We're a society of, we're supposed to have certain rules in our society, and one of those is we're not supposed to be cruel to animals. I mean, there are so many rules in Britain about how you can treat your dog or not treat your dog. Why is it different for a farm animal? So none of this was done with the consent of your average person. It wasn't. Anyway, I hear exactly what you're saying, but this is a really good example of the law of attraction, that people like me that cannot hold their alignment, because I cannot hold them in compassion. I cannot hold them in compassion, Julie. I want to see them dead now, or to suffer first.
Okay, so when perhaps a couple things. As you know, every time that we are here in a human life, we are here to learn something specific, right? So perhaps if you think about your past lives, there were things that transpired that led you to this, that gives you the anger and the non-compassion. I
may have been one of them. Who knows?
Exactly. You may have been a factory farmer. You may I know, this is what I'm
not going to ask. I don't want to know.
This is this is why we have to look at, all of us have been, from a past life perspective, all of us have been male, female, gay, straight, black, white, Asian, name native culture. We have been anything and everything in order to get to this point. And the reason why you and I are here right now having this conversation is because we have been through a shit ton of lives and worked through a lot of things, and we can see, we're part of the group of people who can see that things are in balance and things need to change in order, because ultimately, from a human perspective, we're only working to save the human race. We're not here to save, if you think about it, because Earth's going to go on. Whatever animals,
I agree.
That's what was just, I was just listening to this podcast. Whatever animals are here, whatever species we don't take out, because
I think humans will as well, because like the book we read about I Create is, animals are here living a divine experience and whatever, but they're not creating. It is only humans that create. So if not us, something like us will have to replace us, because, mind you, there are equivalent of humans perhaps on other planets. But that's do you know what? Because I can find compassion with a lot of things, in that, like, I have lived in enough countries, like I lived in Yugoslavia during the war and stuff like that, where I can see, you know, that it's not, you know, that you can't just judge people on what's in a newspaper, and, you know, that because the feelings are so much more complex than that. So I can see all that. I can even with recycling animals, I have a blind spot. Maybe I should do a bit of work on myself. You know, is it going to be good for me or bad for me to discover that I've been a complete bastard in a previous life? Maybe it'd be good for me. Maybe it will help me open up my compassion. I don't know.
It could very well, or no, I'm not even gonna say or. I feel like it's an and. You know, having that context helps with conversations. I also think that finding a way to do what you can do, whether it's having conversations about packaging, whether it's researching, like, I'm not going to buy something from X company because when they ship it to me, it's got a million layers of packaging. And why does it have, like, I do that all the time.
I'll be honest, I'm just not sure I care that much about stuff like that. I just think there are more important. I know that's probably sacrilege to people like you, but I don't care enough about packaging, because I do think there's a lot of nonsense about recycling that goes on, that I irritated that it comes down to me as an individual to have to make these decisions, when I believe those decisions should have been made by more responsible governments and people, you know, it's so easy to push it down to individual choice instead of, you know, we're legislated on absolutely everything. So how did all this happen?
But legislators are human creations. They're not.
No, but they're all in it for the money. The only reason things that are unfavorable to people or unfavorable to the planet, the only reason they get through government is because somebody's making money out of it. That's the only reason it happens.
Right now, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So how can we begin to create governments that aren't about the money? Like, this is where the intricacy of the conversations all begin to take place, because I was just listening to Russell Brand. I love Russell Brand. And I was just listening to Russell Brand over the weekend, and I'm in a situation with a organization that I participate in on a volunteer basis, where there's this conversation about money. And Russell makes the comment and says, if you feel your relationship is based on money, begin to take money out of the equation, which is absolutely true for politics. And for government, this is the thing that in the United States that has bugged me for decades. This is a democracy. These people work for me. And we have seemed, as a body of citizens, we have forgotten that. Instead, we separate ourselves from them. We judge them, we blame them, we get angry with them, but we don't show up to vote. And we don't show up when the legislature comes up to pass that would take the money out of politics. We don't show up to vote. And that's it's like, at what point you have every opportunity to do something good and better. And many people, me, us, all of us, we don't show up to vote. We don't show up to have our voice. We don't write, like in this country, you can write your legislatures. You can call them constantly. You can develop relationships with them. They're human beings. And yet we hold them separate from us. And it's like, oh, they won't hear me. Oh, they're just going to do what they need to do. Well, I know. Okay, so when I lived in Alaska, I had more access to my legislatures, my federal legislatures, than I have in any other place I've ever lived. And you, like, our in Alaska, the Senator is Lisa Murkowski, and people just call her Lisa. That's not, I mean, I'd never seen that before, but that's where you begin to have those conversations of, you work for me. And all she ever said was, please tell me what's going on. Please, I cannot hear you in Washington, D.C. I cannot always hear you. I need you to be in my ear. And when you hear more of politicians ask about, they get pushed by corporations, but they want to hear from people. So we have to talk about these things so that things can change. We cannot hold ourselves separate from these bodies of government that we have created we have to realize we're an integral part of it, just like we're an integral part of nature, an integral part of Mother Earth too.
I wonder what Abraham Hicks would say, because about, because for me to go and dig out my, whoever they are, politician and all of that, that's actually all going to bring up all my shit, which means I'm not going to be helping the situation. So for someone like me, it's probably better that I don't talk about these things and instead wish for, I don't know, a world where animals are treated kindly. And maybe that's the most and the best I can do, is to actually focus on that, because as soon as I go down this road, I am not yet at a stage where I can control the fact that it just makes me want to get really, really, really angry, and it makes me disappointed with the human race. It makes me annoyed with anybody who has any money at all, because they must be at fault. Any businessman, anybody, it starts a tsunami, and this is law of attraction, isn't it? It starts a tsunami of grievance against everybody who I feel has somehow allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
So from my perspective about issues like this, I am actually better not getting angry, because look where it's got me. It's just got me upset.
Yeah.
I would be better not getting upset, not thinking about it, and maybe just wishing or hoping or dreaming or spending a little bit of time thinking about a world where animals are treated with respect. I mean, that's probably the simplest phrase that I could.
I think there's two things there. I think one is everybody has their own piece of pie. So if your piece of pie that you're bringing to the party, this big global party, big world party, whatever, is, if that's how you bring what your piece of pie is that you are going to hold space for a world that you imagine where everything is integrated, we are one with nature, all the things that you brought up, that's your piece of pie. That's fantastic. The other thing too is that it would be interesting to explore how you can participate. So say you want to go one step further, just say, how can you participate and use the anger in a way to create, or come at these issues from a place of love instead of fear or anger? Because there's still, like, when you talk about this, there's still this separate aspect of it. And maybe for right now in this lifetime, that's not what you're talking, that's where you're not supposed to focus. You're not supposed to learn from it. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I just wonder if there isn't a way to engage. You love chickens, for example. You love chickens, and you are aware of how they can be mistreated. And you can, through your love of chickens, just say, and look how well they live here because of whatever. And maybe that's all you have to do. I'm just saying it because it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to do anything on a huge global scale. Just you honoring your chickens, that may just be enough.
Well, I do, because every time, like having them on my profile picture on Zoom, every time we have a meeting, there's a conversation about chickens.
Exactly. And because of you, more people understand what happens with chickens. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough, because I have you in my head when I look at the headlines of the day, and I have a really hard time with just headlines, because depending on the news source, they can be inflammatory and you have to read the story to get the context, blah, blah, blah. So that's me. But I have you in my head as I started all of this work with our teacher, in like really getting in there and watching all the stories. And now I can see a headline. I have a couple trusted news sources, global, that are more fair and balanced. And when I read the headline and it's like, and I feel like, oh boy, here we go again. We're getting pulled, into the dark, into the masculine, the patriarchal, all that stuff. It's just like, I sit there for a moment. I send all parties love and ask for the greatest and highest good of all. And so far, every time I've done that, it's kind of turned out for the best. I'm just saying. So I don't have to I was going to say participate, but that's how I participate. I don't have to get in there and be the ones with the fighting. There are people on this planet that chose to come into this life to do the fight. I can hold, my piece of pie is to hold space for them send them love, and talk about, I mean, this is the anger, passion to creativity, and talk with you about what is these issues and where can I hold space to bring them light.
And I used to think that I was one of these people that was here to fight. But I realize I'm not, because I am too much of an empath. Well, as Abraham would say, I have sloppy boundaries.
Yeah, as do I. I have sloppy boundaries. I'm too much. I don't know if I don't know about the empath part, but I've got too much sloppy boundaries, and well, maybe I am an empath because I'm thinking about a conversation, a big conversation. Lots and lots of people were in this Zoom call on Friday, and I had my ducks in a row, and then it went off into this whole other thing that I wasn't anticipating, and I was absorbing like all their energy, so that at the end of the call I felt like absolute crap. So, but after, meditating over the weekend and regrouping, I'm like, oh, I see what was going on there. They were all making a decision based on fear, and I was trying to get to, okay, well, let's approach it this way. So anyway,
what call was that? Wasn't an animal communication call?
No.
Well, okay, I was going to say that. No, I think all of highly sensitive people are empaths. There must be.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So yeah, no, I realized slowly, I'm not the one to fight. There's people out there fighting, and however I can support them, will absolutely support them. Yeah, and so far it's working out. None of this is, and the other thing I tell like some of our other classmates, much of this is not going to change in our lifetime, but we can leave an impact now and make decisions now that maybe help.
Well, and that's it. And let's never, ever, ever, ever underestimate the impact that you do have, because none of us know. I mean, I know just from the people I've met, you, for example, stuff that you've done that's made a huge impact on me. And it's, you may not think it measures on a scale, but to the person on the other end of it, it's huge.
Right. I mean, if you think about centuries of things that led up to climate change, that's a huge impact. So how are we going to do it backwards, or not backwards, but how are we going to, I don't want to say reverse it, because I don't know what you're going to be able to reverse, but just move it forward in a way that's more in alignment with nature. Like that's where we are right now. So what is it that we're going to do? I personally am going to see if I can't buy things that are made from natural products, packaged less.
Yeah, see, but you've got to be really careful, you see, because there's a lot of this stuff now that they jump onto the bandwagon with their advertising about blah, blah, blah. And what you don't know is it's just as bad in a different way. That's what I find frustrating, is so many of this stuff that, what do they call it, is sort of virtue signaling. And, you go and you do this and that makes you a good person. And when you look at the whole picture, you're like, well, actually, no, it doesn't. This is just another mechanism to get you to buy their stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't keep this short and sweet, did we? And you have to go.
Yeah, shortly. Yeah. So that was our conversation on another way to anger to passion, lots of passion, and hopefully the creativity around treatment of animals, packaging, recycling. We didn't even touch on everything, but hopefully you were able to take something out of that in order to, for yourself, you in your own way, your own piece of pie, make the world a better place. I'm Julie here. With me, as always, is Kate Foggo. We are making light.
Who are we?
I can't even say who we are. We're so excited. We are making light. We are two humans clearly being. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback, please post them in the comments below. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Please also subscribe to this show so that others may find us. And we hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for being here. Bye.